Hey everyone, James Niggemeyer here. Thank you for tuning back into my YouTube channel. With it being April, a month of bed fishing, sight fishing, visually looking at fish in shallow water as they're doing their annual spawning ritual, this is a great time of year to catch bedding fish that you can visually see. And what I want to do is share with you my top 3 all-time favorite or most productive bedding baits. There's so many different bedding baits that you can fish. You could fish a creature bait like this rage bug. There's like these fish imitating type ones. A big like a Senko type bait like this striking shimmy stick, or grub type baits like this rage bug. I mean, the soft plastic line is endless, and there's so many different varieties that will work. If someone made me throw my entire box of sight fishing plastics into the lake, these are the 3 that I would have to have. Number 1, probably my favorite, probably the one that I think you just get so many bites with and works smallmouth, largemouth, spotted bass. When they're on beds, it's really hard to beat a tube. And a 3.5 inch size or 4.5 inch size really just depends on the size of the fish you're looking at. If you're catching fish that are in that 3-pound size and better, a 4.5 inch tube. If you're looking at fish that are, say, a good one's a 3-pounder, then maybe you probably want to go with that 3.5 inch tube. And there's even smaller ones. Your Highland impoundments, where there's not a lot of cover, not a lot of brush, different things like that, you're just dealing with rocks. You might just use a little jig head where you put it up inside. Some of the lakes, like where I live in Texas, these lowland type impoundments, I'm gonna go ahead and Texas rig the tube. Probably anything from a 3/16 up to a 1/2 ounce, depending upon the mood of the fish, how deep the water the fish is located in. But a Texas rig. So the tube is just a phenomenal bait. Something about the tentacles, the way it falls as it goes into the bed, it's just that erratic presentation. When you pop it, it never falls the same way twice. So it's just a phenomenal bait at getting fish to react. But also these tentacles, they just look kind of menacing, like the claws, appendages, or arms of a crawfish crawling across the bottom. It has a great presence, and you can definitely get fish to bite a tube. So that's going to be my number 1 bait. It's a bait that, again, has stood the test of time. I think initially, when really nobody was bed fishing except for Shaw Grigsby and maybe a handful of pros, that was the go-to bait. And I've got a couple different colors. We'll go over colors in a bit, but obviously you see I've got a natural green pumpkin and a white one here. But that's number 1. The tube was probably the one that started it all. I can remember watching Fish Fishburne win a top 150 tour event. I want to say it was on Seminole, but I can't remember exactly. But he was sight fishing with a tube and a spinning rod. That's when we thought the only way to catch them was finesse in that shallow, clear water when they're around beds. But now we know better. We can fish braided line and big old 3/4 ounce jigs. There's a lot of things that you can do, but again, we're going with my top 3 soft plastic offerings for bedding fish, fish that you can visually see. So that leads me to number 2, a lizard. A lizard is just phenomenal at getting fish to bite. Something about the, I'm unlocking the tails here on this striking rage tail lizard, but something about all these swimming appendages, the side arms, the big wavy tail as it's coming through the water. And I think that naturally salamanders, water dogs were eating the bass's eggs. And so this is just a natural predator to them, something they want to keep out and away of their bed. The lizard is a phenomenal fish catcher. I believe it's like a 6-inch lizard. And you could even fish some smaller ones. I believe that's like a 4-inch little lizard. Again, going back to just matching the size of the bait to the size of the fish you're fishing for. If a big one's a 3-pounder, probably go with that little 4-inch lizard, little finesse style lizard. And then if you're trying to catch, a 4, 5, 6, 7-pounder, that bigger lizard, that's going to look a little bit more menacing in that bed. But there are times when these little baits will catch some of those bigger fish too. So keep an open mind, and the lizard is something that I don't know another way to hook it than to Texas rig it. Probably a 4 or 5/0 owner hook, and anything from a 3/16 ounce bullet weight. I prefer tungsten just because of the smaller profile. The fish can't really hold onto it. It's a more dense material. And that lead, they can kind of grab their teeth into it when you're trying to move that hook through the fish's mouth. If it's economical for you, definitely the tungsten 3/16 ounce all the way up to ½ ounce, even 3/4 ounce if you want a super fast drop in a deeper bed. The lizard is just a killer. One of the things on the lizard that I think is cool is, or one of the things that I think important about the presentation on the lizard, again, Texas rig, if I see the bed is right here, I'm gonna cast past it, maybe even up on the bed, on the bank, and just bring it into the water, kind of natural way. It's not really just dropping in on them. That's really all that, not that natural. But you throw it up past them, bring it to the bed, work it, and then shake it, keep it there. And sometimes the fish will swim away and then it'll turn around and come back. You just want to have that bait in its personal space. And every time it kind of comes over to investigate, if you see that when you're shaking it, he doesn't really like that, well then just leave it sit there. Just leave it motionlessly sit on the bottom like that. Just the presence of that bait in the bed can really get some strikes when, say, the tube won't work or some other presentations won't work. So this brings me to my third bait, the must-have bait that I've got to have, and that's going to be a craw. There's so many different craws that you can use. Let's see here. I've got, you have some realistic ones. Like here's a Bitsy Bug Craw. I believe this is the Bitsy Bug Craw that goes on the back of the Striking Bitsy jig. So that's a little bitty guy, but it's more of a realistic craw imitation. But craws in general, where you have these claws like this, these appendages with the swimming action arms, something like that, that looks like a crawfish. When you pull it into the bed, you hop it and the tails are kicking. But a crawfish imitation is killer, whether you use one with swimming arms or just your traditional type arms like that, where more realistic, where they're just kind of sitting there where they're sitting there, don't really put out a lot of action. Sometimes those are going to be better, and then sometimes these other more menacing, more aggravating type presentations as they lift and drop and you hop them in their face. It's definitely a matter of the fish's personality. Sometimes more is better and sometimes less in size and in action is better. But the craw has got to be my number 3 bait. As far as colors, the whites naturally are going to be easier to see in the water. Whites are going to be just easier from a distance, but also when you're fishing a bed that's in deeper water. Initially they're going to bed up in that shallower water because that's where the shallow water is warm first. But then as you go later into the year, those beds will get deeper and deeper and deeper in the water column. So the white works really well when they're at a distance or deeper beds down on the bottom, because you can see where your bait is. You got to know that the bait is in that dinner plate area, that little sweet spot where they're really aggressive about protecting their bed. And so you got to know where that is, and knowing where that bait is, and that helps to make that whole process more efficient. However, there is a time when you got to have something natural, a watermelon red, a green pumpkin, something like that in the bed, even a tube that's more of a shad pattern if there's a lot of shiners in the lake. Something like this, real kind of a natural color, could really work well. Those types of things are important. But again, there's another time when something that's just got a real solid presence, a black neon colored Rage Menace grub or craw, rage craw or lizard or whatever, sometimes those darker colors really put them in the defensive and they want that out of their bed. So that's something to take into consideration as well, is color. So sometimes it's bright, sometimes it's dark, sometimes a bright chartreuse works well, but again, mix it up, try different things, and the fish will let you know. And here's the thing, just because you catch one on one bed on a specific type of color and shape design doesn't mean the next one's going to be like that. They're interesting like that because a lot of times the fish will have their own personality. So just because that worked on one bed fish, that doesn't mean that it's going to work for every bed fish that day. Sometimes you have to mix it up. So what I'll do is I'll have a couple, 2-3 different rods with different baits, and I can go through the process of shapes and colors whenever I locate a fish in that shallow water that's protecting a bed. Those are my top 3 baits that I have to have when fishing for shallow bedding fish in the springtime. Of course, again, there's a lot of other things that work. I'm just giving you my personal top 3 baits that I've got to have when fishing for bedfish in the springtime. I hope this information is valuable to you. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Gonna continue to kick out some content. Hope you like it. And until next time, thanks for watching and good fishing.